In this video, I'll be giving you the historical context of the current conflict between Israel and Hamas and the wider Israeli-Palestinian issue. This video is intended to be an objective overview of the historical background and roots of this conflict and is not intended to provide an opinion one way or the other. To understand where we are in 2023, we have to go back and understand the origin of modern Israel and Palestine and the conflict between the two sides. The land the two sides occupy has historically been seen as the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people, dating back thousands of years. Over the course of time, multiple wars, ethnic cleansing, and expulsion has led to a sharp decline in the Jewish population in the region. By 1900, more Jews lived in Europe than lived in their historic homeland. This ultimately led to the rise of Zionism in the 19th century, a Jewish nationalist movement that sought to establish an independent homeland for the Jewish people in their historic homeland in the Levant. As the Jewish population declined over the centuries, the Arab population had begun to grow. The Arabs living in the region were largely Muslim and had called this portion of the Levant home for hundreds of years as well. They began to build their own national identity and yearn for their own nation, independent from the numerous empires that had ruled them. This eventually led to the rise of Palestinian nationalism. After centuries of rule under the Ottoman Empire, the region came under British control as Mandatory Palestine after the First World War. Under British rule, Jewish immigration to Palestine began to increase. This was due in part to the rise of the Zionist movement globally and due to the crackdown on Jews in Germany in the 1930s, which caused a lot of anxiety among the Jewish population of Europe. The Jewish population in Palestine rose from 11% in 1922 to 31% by 1945. The overall population had gone from a mere 24,000 in 1880 to 630,000 by 1947. This massive change in population led to conflict between the Jews and the Arabs throughout the 1920s and 1930s. The British attempted to curb the violence by cutting down on Jewish immigration, but they found very little success. As World War II raged, the Holocaust decimated the Jewish population of Europe and allowed Zionist leaders to pressure international and British leaders to finally support a Jewish homeland and Mandatory Palestine. The primary motivation for the Zionists was the belief that Jews would never be safe from persecution and bloodshed unless they had their own nation-state. Centuries of pogroms and bloodshed and the recent mass murders by Nazi Germany reinforced these beliefs. At the same time, Palestinian Arabs still wished for their own state. This clash of ideals led to the UN to create a partition plan that was ratified in November of 1947, which sought to create an independent Arab state and an independent Jewish state, with an international zone for the city of Jerusalem. The plan was rejected by the Palestinian Arabs and neighboring Arab nations on the basis that the Jewish state was granted the majority of the land despite being only 1/3 of the population. This led to conflict within Mandatory Palestine between the Arab and Jewish population. The violence escalated when Israel declared its independence the following year in 1948. A coalition of Arab nations invaded the new Jewish state in an attempt to keep the entire territory under Arab control. Ultimately, Israel emerged victorious and gained their independence. They gained more territory than it was originally granted under the UN agreement, and this led to the expulsion of thousands of Palestinians to Gaza and the West Bank. Gaza would remain under Egyptian control, while the West Bank remained under Jordanian control. In 1964, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or PLO, is formed and intends to form an independent Arab state over all of former Mandatory Palestine and eliminate Israel as an independent state. In 1967, Israel launches the Six-Day War against its Arab neighbors. It conquers the Golan Heights from Syria, the West Bank from Jordan, and then Gaza and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt. The dreams of a Palestinian state have now really begun to shrink. In addition to territorial loss, Israeli settlers also began to move into the Palestinian regions with an ever-increasing population, especially in the West Bank. Israel also began to make peace with their Arab neighbors, beginning with Egypt in 1979. Israel would slowly make peace with all their Arab neighbors in some form or another. The tensions between Palestinians and Israelis over the Israeli settlements and the unresolved independent Palestine issue finally reached a boiling point in 1987. That year, the Palestinians launched the First Intifada, or First Uprising. For the next 6 years, violence between Israelis and Palestinians reached levels not seen since the 1948 war. By the end, around 200 Israelis and almost 2,000 Palestinians were dead. The fighting culminated in the Oslo Accords, which sought to move both sides toward a two-state solution. Notably, the PLO agreed to recognize Israel's independence as a part of the Accords and to abandon their advocacy for violence and terrorism against Israel. Another notable development during the First Intifada was the formation of Hamas. Hamas was noted for its advocacy of violence in the conflict, though initially it did focus on military targets before also targeting civilians as well. Hamas was actively opposed to the Oslo Accords and any two-state solution, preferring the end of the Israeli state. In 2000, a second intifada was launched that lasted until 2005. Nearly 1,000 Israelis were killed and over 3,000 Palestinians also lost their lives. In 2005, in response to the second intifada, Israel unilaterally decided to withdraw from Gaza and remove its settlements. This was done for multiple reasons, mostly to the benefit of Israel. Among them were the limited economic value of the Strip, the presence of a large Palestinian population that was resistant to Israeli rule, and improved security in Israel by only defending the borders of Gaza and not occupying the entire Strip. Notably, Israel still controlled water and power to the Strip, a fact that would remain contentious for years to come. After the Israeli withdrawal, Hamas won the 2006 Palestinian elections and in 2007 violently took control of the Gaza Strip as its primary governmental leadership. Israel, which had long considered Hamas a terrorist organization, imposed a blockade on Gaza that continues to this day. This led to several wars in Gaza, first being in 2009, and then in 2012, and also in 2014. All told, 82 Israelis and 3,800 Palestinians were killed in these wars. They also saw the advent of the Hamas rocket attacks and the introduction of the famed Iron Dome in Israel. This all leads us to where we are today, where we've seen the outbreak of the deadliest period of violence in the entire history of the Israel-Palestine conflict. The attacks by Hamas into Israel on October 7th has already claimed the title of the deadliest single day in Israeli history and has gained comparison to Pearl Harbor and September 11th. In terms of its scale and bloodshed, this has been completely unprecedented. These events are currently unfolding, but already over 1,400 Israelis have been killed and over 2,600 Palestinians. Unfortunately, the bloodshed does not look to be coming to an end anytime soon. This has been a very broad overview of the Israel-Palestine conflict, but I hope this video has helped you understand the context surrounding the current war in Israel and Gaza that's going to be ongoing for the foreseeable future. I strive to be as accurate and objective as possible in my presentation, and I hope it's been very informative for you. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a like so that it can reach more people. Moving forward, I plan to cover other recent historical events and their connection to contemporary events. If there's any specific topics you'd like to see, please let me know in the comments below. And I'll see you on the next one.